Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Unreal Tournament live stream. We are going to talk about art today and a new topic to a lot of people, some user experience things. I realize I am no substitute for Flack. She is still sitting off camera. She'll be in the chat stream. If you guys have some questions, she can relay them to us as we're talking and handle any topics there. For those of you who haven't been here before, my name is Jim Brown. I'm a senior designer on UT Project, and I have some amazing epic folks here with me, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hey, my name is Celia Hodent. I'm cognitive psychologist. I'm French as well, and
no
I'm
excuse.
taking care of UX, user experience in here.
I'm Rick. I'm a senior environment artist here at Epic.
I'm Chris Perna, art director.
He's so low key.
I am chill. Yeah.
Anyway, so one thing I wanted to mention real quick is that if you head to unrealtournament.com, you'll find the latest updates on our project. We're going to try and update that a lot more regularly, have a little bit of blog going, and coming soon, not there yet, we're going to have some t-shirt designs coming up. Do we have a picture of those, Stacy? Yes? No?
I'm sorry.
The t-shirts. T-shirts?
No, we don't have them.
No, we don't have t-shirts
I will
yet.
have them soon.
Okay, so keep an eye out on the website. There's going to be some cool t-shirts. You guys can play CTF and be on blue team or red team. You'll see what I'm talking about then. Should be kind of cool. And wanted to jump right into some of the concept art that we had gotten in the forums. We had put out an art challenge previously for people to come up with some characters, some environments, things like that. And we got a lot of submissions in the forums, and so Chris and Rick wanted to go over some of that. If you want to switch over to our first image, we have some characters.
Sure. So, we've been getting a lot of really good stuff on the forums. There's some great logos, some character designs, some environment stuff coming up. Again, really talented guys. So I guess Stacy pulled out some of this stuff that we could look at. Yeah. So, and we'll critique it, right? I mean, this is kind of what I do with my artists and stuff. So we'll take a look at stuff, and I'll offer my feedback and for what that's worth. This illustration here, these three characters, I think the quality of the illustration is very, very well done. I kind of like the color choices and stuff. The way the characters are presented are really well. What I think needs work are the design aesthetic of each character. I would love to see a little more of the Unreal DNA kind of put in there, and I'd love to see iteration too. I mean, these are finished illustrations. I'd love to see different takes on these guys or sketches, a little rougher before we get to something like this, which is finished, to allow us to collaborate and kind of critique some of the stuff in an earlier stage. But as an overall art piece, I think these are fantastic, and this is kind of the quality that we're looking for in a final piece.
It's a good starting point.
When you mentioned the Unreal DNA, I mean, the first thing that jumped out to me is I can't tell what team those guys are on, or what the weapons are, things like that. So there's lots of areas that you could, I think, head that more toward the UT.
Right. I think these guys are feeling a little more UT to me, ish. Mm-hmm. I think they still need a little bit more of the DNA.
Is this the same guy?
Yeah,
as well?
these are Axis Zybot.
Good job, Axis.
Yeah. I like this one a little better. The characters have a little more character to them. They got a little more attitude in the way they're standing.
Yeah, one of the things that you mentioned earlier, Rick, when we were looking at these was team identification too. So that's
something to think about.
Color is something you always have to kind of keep in mind, I guess, when you're designing these. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right. And I really think we need to. I thought about this for a while now about our female characters, and I think Celia is great at that, and we have Loa Vaughn now, who's great at mining some data about female characters and stuff. And then, traditionally we have these very sexy, armored up female characters, and is that really the way we want to go to kind of attract players?
We ventured away from that a bit in the Gears days, slimmed them down and made them, I think, possibly. So you would probably argue with me that they were not quite more realistic.
They were a little more combat. I think they were a little more combat ready.
Yeah.
Or at least they felt that way.
So feel free to disagree.
So,
sure.
Sure, it's just
She says you're
it's a
crazy.
slippery discussion here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't mean to open a huge can of worms. It was just an overview of
No, it's just give a chance to everybody to be able to recognize themselves in the characters.
I mean, the female here doesn't stand out away from the male characters as
Sure.
being like a female character. She looks as combat ready as the other guys, really.
Yeah, and I mean, Lauren is one of the main characters
Right.
in the franchise, right?
Right.
So females are a little bit harder. When I think this image is supposed to be a jug, which are typically the big, giant, genetically gene-boosted, horrible dudes. But we did have a few females there as well,
Right.
in previous games.
This guy looks like he's got a cool attitude and stuff
Yeah, these
going
are all
on, but
symptoms I bought.
yeah. I was going to say his attitude is right.
he looks like he should have a bulkier frame to go with that head. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think proportionally it's okay. I think where it becomes a little design challenged is in the thigh area and the feet area for me. I'd love to see something a little different happening down near the feet. Some of the armor is kind of ambiguous. I'd like to see some of that more defined, and the abdominal section looks like it would work. But some of the others just look like maybe it would be a little rough for him to move around, kind of
Yeah.
thing, you know.
And a lot of the feedback was people wanted to stay away from the big bulky.
Yeah,
armor
that was going to be
and
my first
stuff.
question: is did we even want to explore the jugs at this point, since they're the more
I mean, it can't
big,
hurt. I
giant
don't want to
dudes as
discourage
opposed to
people
them.
from doing what
Yeah.
inspires them, right?
That's
So
true, yeah.
if you're inspired by doing a jug, I think that's fine. I mean, we can just take a look at it and you know, critique it and stuff. But
one more from this guy. I think it's a pretty similar concept.
yeah, it looks
like
similar
a-
from the
Yeah, it
abdomen
looks more
and,
like a
and the
War
thighs
Machine
and the
guy.
feet, right? But it looks more like a corrupt, right?
This one, I think this personally, anyway, not being an artist,
Sure.
this looks better to me as a robot than it does as a jug
Yeah.
or
Right.
armored
I felt
human
the
type
same
character.
way. Yeah.
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 Just proportionally, it feels better.
Yep, absolutely. I would be careful. Just go back to that one for a little bit. I'd be maybe careful of how we design, you know, the chest pieces and how they come into the shoulders, and the thighs, how they come into the pelvis, and think about range of motion. These are things that an animator will look at, and you know, a lot of our guys, they'll go through a design process with the concepts for the characters, and they'll be constantly pinging the designs off the animators and stuff, and they'll be checking for range of motion and things like that. So this guy looks like he might be a little stiff in certain areas.
This
So,
little
yeah.
insectoid
so when
in
you
the middle.
design, just keep that in mind.
Do you think we'll end up with multiple skeletons, or
I don't know.
I imagine
I would
in
like
the
to.
initial release we'd probably just have the one. But
Yeah,
can see
I
us
would like
branching
to
out.
eventually. I think a scar, anyway we do that,
Oh,
might
yeah,
might
yeah.
need to have a different skeleton. And I know there's some other things that Steve had wanted to do that might require that. So
This is a Sapphire one, who was a character from
2004.
well, I think she might have been in the original
Yeah.
as well, but this particular iteration looks like a update of that.
She looks
The UT
pretty
2003
traditional
or
UT.
2004. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a solid traditional UT character. I'd like to see maybe a little more liberty taken in
bring it forward a
different
little bit.
areas. But then again, we could do that on the model side too. You know, I think it's a pretty solid concept. So yeah,
It may or may not help. I don't know. Maybe I'm going out on a limb here, but if all of these named characters also have kind of a written backstory that tells a little bit about their personality and what they've gone through, and I don't know, it may help inspire people or guide them a little bit. I don't know.
maybe
I
the
always like that
visual
kind of
on the
stuff
character.
myself.
Yeah.
should kind of take on some of those
It kind
aspects.
of helps to have those stakes
Yeah.
put in the ground, I think, the kind of design for them, I think.
This was a cool shock rifle that came in. We have the render as just the model, as well as they did a first and third person. That was, I believe it was based off the original UT-99 shock rifle.
So yeah, I mean,
By Bloodshot.
right. For me,
Bloodshot.
this image, you know, the colors don't feel right. Maybe it's just the way the rifle is superimposed over the backdrop, and they're so similar, and nothing really stands out. I also think the design of that original shock rifle was a little flawed. Yeah, I mean the little carrier on top and stuff is very distracting, and we will. I'd love to see kind of a revision on this that maybe cleans it up a little bit. Makes go back to the model, Jim. The model feels a little bit mushy. I'd love to see that kind of sharpened up a little bit with some hard edges maybe in some areas, and just generally cleaned up a little bit and a little more well defined.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I think that our UT 2003/4 models were a little softer like this.
Yes, yes, they definitely were.
As opposed to the UT 99 ones, which were a lot more angular. And
right. So and I think moving forward in a modern game, we're going to need to be aware of that stuff and realize that, yeah, those original designs were cool, but we need to update them somehow and make them fit in a modern world, not a modern UT world, but our
one thing I do like about
updated
this
game
is that it looks like a rifle to
Yes.
me, as opposed to some weird sci-fi contraption made up of pieces that don't necessarily fit together.
Absolutely.
And it is a shock rifle,
It looks
so
functional.
that's cool. A little muzzle brake on the front and stuff. All right. Is this power-up bases? Do you know who did this one, Stacy?
Yes, I do. This one was actually, oh, the next two are from Dan Paz 3D.
Dan Paz 3D.
All right.
So again, the bases themselves are a little bit of a controversial topic. So I know that it's something we're going to have to talk about on design side. But the one thing I did like about this is that it has it looks like a moving part in there, so that could help with like, oh, when is something spawning here? It's down, it's available, and then when it's up, it's not available. So I guess that's what he's trying to convey.
Yeah, I thought those were two different
Oh, could be.
things, maybe.
That's a cool idea, though.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That was taken.
Yeah,
That's
so,
just-
so
I
you
like-
can see like as it moves down and then it turns green and the power up comes on. So.
Right. Yeah.
I
it's
like the one
interesting.
that's sunk into the ground. I don't, it might be hard, like aesthetically, I like that, but function-wise, I
That's
don't know if
true.
you'll
Like
be
we'd
able
have to make that work.
Yeah, we'd have to have a custom floor everywhere
Yeah.
it went. So,
Yeah.
but I actually like the idea a lot. I like how it's bolted to the floor instead of just
I
like
wonder if we
a
could do that with
magic
shaders
pedestal.
somehow too. I don't know. There's a lot of ways we could play with that. And then a new scar. I think there's a couple of these. Are these
These are
different?
with from Dan too. Dan Paz.
Both of them? Are they both the same model?
Looks like
just
it.
rendered different?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it.
So yeah, I mean, I like this. I think it's going in the right direction. I mean, it's a little different than the concept we posted, but I think that's okay, right? Some critiques on this is it kind of has a little bit of a Fishman vibe with the
bit of merman.
fins, and I know some of the others had fins too, and I don't know why this one in particular has a little bit more of that.
I think it's the location, like right on the elbow there. It's like in the knee
Yeah.
here. It's like the traditional merman type.
Yeah.
fins.
I like the
And maybe it's just his pose. I don't
Yeah,
know. My main crit on this is it's very humanoid, and I'd love. It's almost like we took a traditional male figure and added some creepy hands and feet and stuff like that. And I think we should kind of change that somehow.
Right.
The chest and the abs, the thighs, I think need to be a little thicker.
Yeah,
Maybe
some more like aggressive proportions, maybe. Maybe
Yeah.
the stance would help, maybe.
right.
Yeah, the original Scar had really broad shoulders and like no
Right.
neck.
Right.
Yeah,
he
he
had
did.
huge traps.
Yeah.
And then the nose. I'm a nose tweaker. So on the forums, I was some of the other guys were messing around with models, and the nose just kind of didn't feel right. And this one, I feel like the same thing. It feels a little more orcish or trolly. And these guys generally don't really have a nose. It's kind of like nostrils that come out. So this little bud of a nose, I just don't feel fits the character. And I'd love to see it tweaked a little bit.
Right.
It's interesting you mentioned that there was another render that was in the forums. It might even have been in the same thread that somebody posted that looked like a really good, I don't think we have the image of it, a really good like high poly model, but it had this nose on it and Joe Wilcox also said the same thing you said, that it looked too much like an orc.
Yeah. It
as
takes
opposed
on
to
a different
reptile.
characteristic. I think, was it the cover of 2004? The scar on that might have had a nose similar to this, but it never really worked for me. I'd love to kind of push it.
2004 fan kit. I think there's a picture.
Yeah,
of it.
I'd love to try and push it a little bit more in the creature direction than human.
All right, and then we also have a collection of environment art. And before we start talking about these specifically, I wanted to mention that we have the new contest up on Polycount. And I don't know if you wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, we have a concept art master challenge on Polycount, and I would love for everyone to jump in and join. There's prizes and there's cool stuff, and what we're trying to do is kickstart the environment art process. And to do that, we need some really cool concept art. Now, we've got artists in-house that can do stuff. What I'd like to do is collaborate with the community. And I think the strength of that is that we come up with something that we would never thought of, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of times we'll be, stuck in a rut, or we'll rat hole on a certain idea, and somebody comes out of left field and they just come up with something fantastic. And that's the beauty of working with the community like this. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I hope everybody kind of joins in. And I posted some screenshots of some of the levels that you can paint over. It seems like a pretty easy thing to do. And we're not looking for anybody to kill themselves or anything like that, but take a weekend and mess around with stuff, a couple hours here or there, and I'd love to see what you guys come up with. So yeah.
And just to fulfill my Stacy obligations here, that is, you can find more information at unrealtournament.com, and the challenge itself is actually posted over at Polycount, which you can also find the official rules and all that, and Stacy's going to post a link in the stream. So this is our first environmental concept that I think we've gotten out of the forums. Guba, he's been a busy artist.
Cool. Finally some environment stuff. The environment forums seem like they've been a little quiet, so it'd be kind of good. Hopefully the contest will jumpstart some of the concepts a little bit. This is really cool. I think this guy has some good stuff. There's some strong design sense in here. This doesn't necessarily feel like UT to me. It feels a little Naboo, a little Star Wars, but that's not to say that's a bad thing. It just doesn't necessarily fit, I think. UT.
It's an interesting chicken and egg. Like it seems like if we had some levels that people could do paint overs on, that would be easy. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we need more broad environmental stuff like this to decide what those environments are going to look like.
And I think ultimately, UT is everything and anything.
Yeah,
I mean
that's
the thing, right? So I think to pattern match, that looks like a concept from Star Wars. That's a really big compliment, I think, to Guba. I think the quality of what I see here is amazing, and this is the quality that I hope.
There's a lot of atmosphere.
Yeah, it's the bar. I hope we kind of keep this bar with some of our environment concepts and stuff, and I think this is pretty cool. And it's great.
It'd be interesting to see us take one of these and do a breakout on it, like we typically do in-house. Where we've, I'm sorry, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, we'll take like the certain pieces and highlight them and say like, oh, this can be a wall panel or this can be a support piece. And just kind of break it up into its individual aspects.
Sometimes we'll even pass that back to the concept artist and we'll say, hey, this roof piece here or this wall, can you define this a little more? It's not quite clear in the concept. And they'll just do kind of that's why we call it a breakout, because then they'll break that piece out and they'll detail it more and define it more for the artist that's going to build that.
So this is pretty cool. This feels a little more UT to me.
Yeah, definitely. I see CTF base written all over that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly. I would probably maybe eliminate some of the other light sources and maybe just kind of use the strong light source coming in from the top. But it's cool. It's interesting. I like the red plants. That could be something pretty cool to just place around as an accent color.
Yeah, it has purple. Celia likes purple. It's her favorite color.
Careful with the red overload, though.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that next. We'll get to that next.
I think
go ahead.
The shape language in this piece feels really UT to me. Mm-hmm. The angled doorways and the lights and the placement of the floor panels and things like that. So
yeah, it definitely looks like a CTF map for sure.
This is cool as an image. I like it. I don't know if you have anything to comment on it, Chris. It's just as an image in itself. I think it's really cool.
I think it's
The concept,
I think it
don't know.
works. I think it's pretty abstract though.
Right.
I'd love to see it flushed out a little more. Maybe it's just that the cropping of it, or maybe it needs to it needs to have more of a sense of place. You know, could this be a tower in Facing Worlds? I don't know. You know, but.
It could be like a cool background element. Almost,
Yeah,
you know,
it's
like
certainly
outside the
interesting.
play
I just
area.
think we need more context to the image. And
But it's a good rendering. It's a good. It's a good painting.
All right.
And this is pretty much my favorite one, and I think a lot of the other Epic guys like this one as well.
yeah, I like that too.
This has a lot of character. I could easily see this being some kind of CTF map, some kind of industrial version of Facing Worlds or something. I like this a lot. There's lots of opportunities to show the skybox and stuff from inside the play area, which would be cool.
Oh yeah,
as well.
yeah. See, it reminds me a lot of Peak from the original. You know, I can picture running around on the girders and trying not to fall off.
Yeah.
Going
If you could have
weaving
some-
inside and outside.
It could also have what was it, Phobos?
Yeah,
the moon
yeah,
base, like that type of feel, like a derelict space station. I mean, you could do something like that with this really easy,
Yeah.
and have the different layers and the vertigo feel of running outside and inside.
If
and
you could
stuff.
have some moving parts there,
Yeah.
you know, even the wires moving in the wind a little bit. And I like how he implied the atmosphere there with, you know, the other tower being kind of
In the
faded out there a
distance,
little bit.
Yeah, it's sweet.
And is there one more? Yep. Nope. That's it for us. So.
Nice job, guys.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very good.
Cool stuff.
Can't wait to see more. It's awesome.
So one of the other things that we did very recently was we started a usability test, and we wanted to get a baseline for what the previous games had, and what areas that we could improve on them before we moved on to doing testing on the current iteration of the game. So Celia put together our first usability test for Unreal Tournament, and we actually did a look at Unreal Tournament 3. Before we start going into some of those kind of specific stuff, I wanted her to have the opportunity to explain kind of what user experience is, what usability testing is, and why she's here and what she brings to the table for us.
Yeah,
So.
why am I here?
I don't know why you're here.
So user experience is making sure that the players in the end are having a great experience with whatever we design. So it's making sure that they understand what they have to do. They don't really have a problem with the controls, with the HUD, that everything feels intuitive. But not just that. So that's the usability part, that makes sure that everything is clear and it's not too messy. And then we also have the flow part of it, like making sure that they have a great time and they're having fun. So it's complicated to measure, but we have ways to do that. So that's the reason why we did a usability test. And not just me, it was just the group, the UX team. So hi to Rex and Laura and Tom and Stephanie, who helped me out to put that together because it's a lot of work to do, and so it's pretty cool as well. So we invited some gamers, like shooter players, but most of them, most of them have never seen Unreal Tournament before, so it was the first time they played.
Yeah, there was 6 hardcore gamers.
Yep.
4 of them had never seen UT, and 2 of them hadn't played in years or something like that.
Yeah. The 2 others, they played for a long time ago, and they played on UT3. And basically, what we did is we put them in front of the game and looked how they reacted to the game, and we didn't explain anything, and we wanted to see if they understood the HUD, all the information on the screen, what we call the signs and feedback. Was it all clear? Is it clear how to use a gun, or do you really have to mess with the controls to find it out? So we have good findings in there, and so we analyzed the behavior and.
So just to be specific, when a lot of people hear UX, usability, accessibility, the first thing that they think is, oh, you're trying to dumb the game down or make it easier, or you're tailoring the game to newbie-style players.
No, that's not what we do. No, what we're doing is making sure that the experience we want for them is the one they feel in the end. So if we want an experience that is really hard, like, Dark Souls kind of stuff, when you really hard to, have a hard time and die over and over again. So if this is the experience we want, we're gonna make the test to make sure that this is what they feel.
Right.
So if the experience we want is a great shooter that is easy to just pick up, but then have a great depth. This is what we're gonna try to do.
Okay, cool. No, that's always people's first reaction, is they think that we're dumbing down the game whenever we talk about this kind of stuff, and I want to make sure that that's absolutely not the case.
Not the case.
And with this test specifically, we weren't looking at gameplay. We were looking very specifically at HUD elements and how people perceived that, how readable it was. And you came up with actually some pretty interesting findings, I think. So, if you want to start from the top of the list there.
Sure. One thing I just wanted to explain a little bit is when we do this analysis, so we look at how people react to the game, but we also look at that through the lens of science, of neuroscience, and how the brain analyzes the environment. So it's all about attention, memory, perception, and so we look at all these with this.
That's another good point, that this is, UX really tries to add kind of the scientific method and data analysis to design, very, very separate from the suggestions and opinions kind of angle of things. So again, when we talk about usability, we're talking about very, very scientific stuff and actual data, and then we compare that against what our original intentions were and what our design goals are. So
So one of the stuff that we found out is, well, one of the big thing that is actually very common in games is the red overload. So we talked about that a little bit earlier on. So what happens when we have that is so red is a very good color to draw attention to whatever is really dangerous to you. Well, you're gonna get killed, you're really dying, an enemy is like threatening you, and red is typically a good color to draw attention. But if we have too much red all over the place, then it stops being a good color to draw attention. So, and actually this is what we observed, especially when you're on the red team. All your HUD is red.
Yeah, actually there's a really good screenshot in the report, and I want to post this in the forums. It's someone on the red team with a red HUD taking damage, so they have a red overlay with the red rocket launcher with like it was just like the whole screen is just red and you can't see anything that's going on. I'll post it in the forum so you can see what I'm talking about. It's a really cool shot. So that actually brings up a larger question for us, is that multiplayer games, UT for sure, has traditionally been red team versus blue team. Should we stray from that? Is there reasons why we should or should not?
It's not the only shooter that does that way. I understand why, because red versus blue is like easy to discriminate. But usually you want to keep the red for the enemies or the threats. So if we could have, so if your enemy team is always red, or actually it's better to have an orange enemy team, because whenever you really get critical health or stuff like that, then everything turns red. Then it draws your attention. If your enemies are red, it's a little bit more difficult. But if it's orange or a color that it still indicate threat, but it's not red or a different kind of red, that'd be great. And so whatever team you are on, if the enemy is always red, that's better. Yeah,
so this actually sparked a big discussion on internally in the team is, do we want to stick with red and blue? Should we look at blue and orange? Should we blue, orange and green? So, again, post in the forums, let us know what you think. There's a lot of options here. But this is going to have impact on weapon designs, on level designs, on character designs, on HUD. I mean, it's a kind of a big, broad-reaching topic. So I want to start the conversation now before we commit to anything.
One thing, we want to make sure also that it's accessible to colorblind people.
There you go.
So we have to take that into account as well.
Yeah. So green probably not our best option. What is it? Red, green, colorblind?
There are different colors.
So what was the next thing on the list?
Yeah, that was a big thing. There was also the signs and feedback on damage, and overall the signs and feedback that you have on the reticle is not super clear. So the only feedback, feedback is whatever you're doing something, you get this feedback from the UI or the HUD. And on the reticle, you only have the feedback when you hit an enemy, it turns red. You don't have any feedback when you have your reticle above an enemy that is at range, because there are maybe just one gun, but there's some guns.
Well, so she and I were talking about this earlier. In a lot of shooters, when you crosshair over an enemy, your crosshair turns red to let you know that's an enemy. or when you put your crosshair over an enemy, it turns red to let you know, okay, they're within range and you can hit them. UT is in a little bit of a unique spot in that all of the guns have 2 fire modes, and one may be long range and one may be short range, and so you're never quite sure if you're in range, or if you're setting a trap, does it matter if there's an enemy? So there's all these different things. You may not actually be targeting them, you may be targeting the ground in front of them. So there's a lot of work there to be done, I think, that's kind of non-traditional in terms of crosshairs and HUD.
Yeah, and in usability, there's always some trade-offs. So we have to define what is really what are our priorities, what we really want to convey. Because if it's really important to convey that information, we could think of a vertical with like double circle, whatever the vertical.
Yeah.
And one for short range, one for
all the animated crosshairs. We have a really good one in for the rocket launcher right now that we took from UT3, but that's always been a big issue, I think, just in games, is how and when to animate them, and how much information you can put in the crosshair, how much you need on the gun itself, and how much you need on the HUD.
So you want information, but then you don't want to have
overload
of information. So it's a lot of balancing.
And there is a thread going right now in the forums as well about HUD and UI and what information we should show there and where we should do it and how big and how small and customization and all that other stuff. So again, hop in and let us know what you're thinking.
Yep. So that was a big one. And there's no feedback on actually, no, we talked about that already.
I think Rick is over here drawing a new HUD for us.
Yes.
Somebody should write a new
One of the other things is like inconsistency in controls for certain weapons, and so it's tied to the HUD.
Right.
Because it's nice to convey, and the HUD and the UI.
Yeah, you want to convey. One of the things that we talked about early on was we want our functionality to be conveyed in the visuals of the weapon and in the crosshair itself. You know, whether that's the rotating barrel on the rocket launcher, or when it pops up to let you know that one is loaded. You know, when you have the old bio rifles usually have like a chamber that fills with the goo as you're loading up. So we want to put as much of that information as we can on the weapon itself, so that it's visible, so that players can infer the functionality before they actually have to use it.
Yeah. On the weapon itself, sometimes it could be on the reticle, because if you have a weapon that needs charging, this is something we can convey on the reticle. We can also think about conveying that on the ammo, because on the ammo HUD, because right now the ammo HUD is just showing
just a number,
and that's it. So we can think about having an ammo.
Yeah, there was also something on there that was, what was it, the frag one, that people didn't know what it was. It's like one of the most important things is what is your score, and people had no idea what that number meant.
Oh yeah, this one.
Yeah.
So people were thinking that maybe this is how many lives I've got left. How many time I can respawn before I'm over. Just because it's just a number and you have a skull next to it, but the skull could mean death.
Could mean any number of things.
So we have to ask ourselves: is it important to convey that information all the time on screen? If it is, maybe we can think about, maybe adding a scope on the skull, so it means more like kill count, something like that. And overall the font use is not super clear. I mean, if you well, it's not going to show on the camera, but if you look at something like that, it's hard to tell if it's a 6 or if it's an 8.
Yeah.
It looks a bit weird, so we can work on the font and make sure that it's always legible, so we have a good perceptibility on the HUD. Did you want to talk about the time indicator, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of. I'll post a more detailed one in the forums. It's just options of, do we show timer? Do people want to see timer? Is that too much information? All that kind of stuff. Some of it we might leave that up to you, but again, there's a thread in the forums right now about what options we should show in the HUD, so chime in if you have an opinion. So
that's why it's really important to define what experience we want them to have, so we can prioritize everything and make sure that we tackle that. The big one that you wanted to talk about, that's related to the red overload. There were some players observed that repeatedly attacking their own teammates.
Yeah,
especially when they were swapping.
Yeah, so one of the things that we found, which we hadn't really thought about before, was you play a match and you're on the blue team, and then you switch and the next match starts and you're on the red team. And so your first instinct is to think, oh, I used to be on the blue team, so I'm going to go ahead and shoot the red guy. when you didn't realize that you had switched teams. We had a big conversation internally about ways to solve that, throwing you into lobbies, making it very obvious. Even in UT3, when you spawned, it would say you were on the blue team, just to try and beat people over the head, but they still didn't hear that. It still wasn't obvious. And I think part of it, as you mentioned earlier, was that people see red, they see danger, they shoot. So I haven't analyzed the video in total depth yet, but I'd be really curious to see how many people shot their teammates on the red team versus how many people shot their teammates on the blue team, because I would bet that it's more on the red team because they were just reacting to red danger and firing.
Yeah, this is very hard to counter.
Yeah.
You're like primed to react on red and to shoot on the red.
So again, maybe it should be orange. I don't know. You tell me.
That's pretty much it. I mean, we have a lot of feedback from different stuff, but that was the main problems that we saw that we could think about and see how we can do better so the experience is even more compelling.
It was a good primer, right? It gave us a baseline of kind of where we are and where we want to move forward from there. And hopefully we'll be doing many more of these as we move forward, and we'll move away from UT3 and start doing them on the actual game that we have. So as things kind of start to coalesce and come together, we can figure out that if our design is actually working in the way we want it to for our players. And especially since we're building this along with you guys in the community, I think that's super important.
Yeah, and by the way...
Don't have to dodge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we learned people don't know how to dodge. But, I mean, we were looking specifically at the HUD on this one, so we didn't give them the full introduction to here's how you use a weapon and here's how you do all that other stuff that we might normally give kind of a tutorial. So anyway, we'll see what happens moving forward.
And by the way, if you want to participate into one of
Oh
these
yeah,
UX
we have a slide here.
you should sign up to epicgames.com/UX. So it's easier, of course, if you live near Raleigh.
Yes.
So we have a cool lab here.
And that's not just for UT, that's also for Fortnite, that's also
everything.
for the engine, that's for everything that we do here. We're trying to bring people in and kind of see how you interact with our products. So that's cool.
We're doing that for you, so we want to do that with you and make sure that the experience is awesome.
Awesome. Anybody have anything else? No?
Good.
Yes? Rick, you're going to show your awesome drawing off?
Yeah.
Scribbles.
Oh, yeah, look at that concept art.
Somebody said in the thread said, oh, he's scribbling, he's drawing.
I think it's an artist's nervous habit, right?
Exactly.
If I had paper, I'd probably be doing it too. And it would probably look even worse than your scribbles. All right, so I guess that brings us to the end of our stream for today. Go ahead and follow us on our YouTube channel, on Twitter, on Facebook, everywhere you can find us, including UnrealTournament.com. And don't forget that we have another live stream tomorrow for Unreal Engine 4. Does anybody know what their topic is?
One of the topics they're going to be talking about is future Twitch integration.
Ah, sweet. So we're talking a little bit more about Twitch, which is directly relevant to UT. So I'd love to get some opinions on that if you want to hop over and watch that. Otherwise, we will see you next week. And don't forget that if you missed this or tell your friends, you can download the whole thing on YouTube later on, or catch the podcast on our blog, or available on iTunes very soon. So thanks for stopping by.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.